preaching through Perry County in our 6th session. Today we're at a place called the Wagner Community Park outside of New Bloomfield. And I'm standing on what was the remains of an old railroad bed that used to run through this valley. And one probably wouldn't guess it, but there was this pretty serious lawsuit that was filed and went all the way to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court in Perry County back in the 1880s. What happened was there's two types of railroads. One started by Newport and one started by New Bloomfield. And both of these were fighting for supremacy, and the New Bloomfield track was a narrow gauge track, which means it didn't use the standard width of the tracks. It was actually more narrow, which made it cheaper to build, also made it faster to build. And so these two railroads are competing for supremacy, and they went all the way to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. And generally when these types of cases came to the Supreme Court, or any type of court, the standard gauge track won. However, in Perry County, that didn't happen. This was a rare win for the narrow gauge track, and they were given the right of way over the other tracks. Now, it's interesting because as we stand here and we look at this, we recognize that, just a little over 100 years later, there's nothing here. But I wonder how many men and women lost sleep over the fact that they were investing in this railroad that may or may not be here, and how many times did they sit up and worry and be concerned about the outcome of this case that was out of their control. But yet, 100 years later, do you see any railroad tracks? There's none here. They're all gone. And what was one time such a huge and major concern for these people, now all that's left is remains. And it's a great reminder because there's a lot of things we can pour our time and effort into that we think are really, really important at the time. But when we look back on them from a historical side, we may begin to realize, man, that wasn't as important as I had initially thought. Paul taught this to the Corinthians well in 2 Corinthians 4:16 through 18. It says, "Therefore we do not lose heart, even though our outward man is perishing. Yet the inward man is being renewed day by day. For our light affliction, which is but for a moment, is working for us a far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory. While we do not look at the things which are seen, but the things which are not seen. For the things which are seen are temporary, but the things which are not seen are eternal." We live in a world where we see things visually every day. And often that vision that we have, the things that we see, those often become our biggest and greatest distractions. But Paul comes along and encourages people with these 3 verses. And it says, don't lose heart. Even though our outward man is perishing, yet our inward man, our soul, our heart is being renewed day by day. The light affliction which he suffered, and we know that Paul suffered some pretty serious afflictions. He considered them light in comparison to the glory that he was going to experience when he gets to heaven. And then there's that reminder at the end, these things that you see, everything you see. At one time you would have seen tracks running through this little valley. They're not here anymore. All that's left is remains. That huge major priority at the time now doesn't really mean anything except a nice place to walk. And if you've never been to Wagner Community Park, it's a wonderful place to visit. One of my favorite places to take a walk. The railroad bed runs right along the Little Juniata Creek, and it's a wonderful place where it's nice and quiet, and one of my favorite places when I need a place to go, walk, think, and pray a little bit. But it's also a great reminder that the things that are seen, they're only temporary. Even the big things that are seen, they're only temporary. It's the things that we don't see that are eternal. Love, joy, humility, compassion for other people. When we invest in these things, that's when we begin to find our eternal rewards. Remember, it says, the things which are not seen are eternal. Strive for the eternal today. Don't be misled by what you see. Strive for the eternal and the things that you can't see. And we're praying for you. We wish you well, and God bless.